Story 1. This happened during the last week of middle school, in a quiet suburb of Virginia where nothing ever really happened. My name's Ryan, and I have just finished 8th grade. You know how the last day of school usually goes. Everybody's a little hyper, some kids cry, teachers pretend to care, and everyone's signing yearbooks like their life depends on it. At my school, we had over 1,000 students, so instead of letting us pass our yearbooks around ourselves, the teachers had this system where they collected them and passed them from room to room. Honestly, it was kind of a mess. People could sign whatever they wanted, whether they knew you or not, and there were definitely a few kids who used that opportunity to be jerks. I got mine back just before the final bell, and I remember feeling really sentimental, flipping through the pages, reading notes from my friends. Some of them were stupid and funny, others were kind of heartfelt, but then I noticed something weird. There was a message and a name I didn't recognize. Right under a picture of someone I couldn't place was a signature. Jeremy Walters. The message just said, "Hags, I'll be seeing you again." Short, strange. The way he wrote, "I'll be seeing you again," gave me chills, even though I told myself it was probably just some edgy humor. The thing was, I had zero memory of this kid. I hadn't talked to him. I wasn't in any clubs with him. I couldn't remember seeing him at lunch or in the halls. Nothing. Still, I shrugged it off. It was summer. No more school. No more weird Jeremy. Or so I thought. That night, I had a sleepover with my best friends, Jake, Noah, and Ben. We were in my basement eating chips and gaming until way too late. My parents' bedroom was 2 floors above, so we didn't have to keep quiet. Around 1:45 in the morning, we were taking turns on my dad's rowing machine, just being idiots, when there was a knock. Not at the front door, not on the side. It was the storm door, the one only accessible from the backyard. We all froze. It wasn't just one knock either. .it was a weird pattern, like someone was tapping out a beat on purpose. Jake looked at me, wide-eyed, and before I could stop him, he shouted, "Who's there?" I wanted to punch him. If whoever was out there didn't know we were in the basement, they did now. The knocking stopped. We waited. Then, a voice answered, "Come to the back door." It was cheerful, weirdly cheerful, like a kid our age trying to sound like he was just dropping by for fun. The voice was high-pitched, not creepy exactly, but way too casual for 2 a.m. Ben and Noah thought it was funny. They were whispering to each other, daring me to check. I didn't want to. I really didn't. But peer pressure is a powerful thing. We tiptoed up the stairs. My heart was beating out of my chest. I peeked out the kitchen window that overlooked the back porch. At first, I just saw a shadow. Then the motion light clicked on, and I saw him. Jeremy Walters. I knew instantly. The face from the yearbook. He was just standing there, like he belonged. My friends moved toward the door, thinking it was someone from school messing around, but I stopped them. "I know who that is," I whispered, and I told them about the yearbook message. They went quiet. Jeremy must have seen us through the glass because he started waving, like he was inviting me outside. He pointed toward the side of the house, like he wanted me to come talk. At this point, I was freaking out, but it still didn't fully register as dangerous. I guess because he was a kid, not an adult. Not some horror movie villain. Just another student. I moved to the window and opened it a crack. Jeremy came closer. He smiled. "So you got my message," he said. Then he introduced himself casually, like we were supposed to be friends. Said he always noticed me in school. Said he thought we could have been close. I nodded politely, pretending to go along. I didn't want to make him angry, but inside, I felt this overwhelming dread. Something wasn't right. I asked him how he knew where I lived. He didn't answer. He just stood there, staring. The silence stretched too long. My friends were whispering behind me, trying to decide what to do, and that's when I realized he wasn't just being weird. He had planned this. He had followed me, and we were alone. Completely alone, just us and the storm door. I didn't know what to do next. Jeremy just stood there, smiling at me through the window, like we were old friends catching up. My heart was racing, and I kept looking at his eyes, trying to figure out what he wanted. There was something empty about his face, like he wasn't really seeing me, more like he was watching something in his head that had nothing to do with reality. My friend stood behind me whispering, unsure whether this was a joke or something serious. I whispered again through the small crack in the window and told him I was tired, that it was late, that maybe we could talk another time. He didn't respond right away. He just kept smiling, like he didn't even hear me. Then, without warning, he leaned in really close to the glass and whispered, "Your friends don't understand you like I do." That was the moment it stopped feeling weird and started feeling dangerous. I stepped back and quickly slid the window shut, locking it. He didn't move at first. He just stayed there, staring at us, even as I backed away. Then he tilted his head slowly, like he was confused or disappointed. And suddenly, his smile dropped. That peaceful look on his face twisted into something I can only describe as hate. He slammed his hand against the glass so hard it made a sound like a whip crack. All of us jumped. Ben yelled something like, "What is wrong with this guy?" And Noah ran to grab my dad's old baseball bat. I couldn't take my eyes off Jeremy. He kept banging the glass over and over, snarling at us like an animal. I could see his teeth bared, his eyes wide, like he was about to explode. I thought the window might actually shatter. I yelled upstairs for my parents. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. I just needed them to wake up, and thank God they did. The moment I heard their footsteps on the stairs, Jeremy froze. Just like that, he turned around and sprinted off the porch, disappearing into the darkness. My parents rushed into the kitchen, demanding to know what was going on. I told them everything I could get out, stammering the whole time. My dad grabbed a flashlight and ran outside in his slippers and t-shirt. He was gone for maybe 5 minutes before coming back in, breathless and frustrated. He hadn't found anyone. Jeremy was just gone, like he'd vanished into thin air. I begged them to call the police, but weirdly, they didn't. They said maybe it was just a confused kid, and they'd talk to the school first thing in the morning. I didn't argue. I was too shaken up to do anything but nod. None of us slept much that night. We stayed in the basement, all the lights on, every noise making us jump. The next morning, true to their word, my parents called the school. I overheard parts of the conversation from the hallway, but what they learned chilled me to the core. Jeremy Walters had been expelled nearly a month before the school year ended. He wasn't even supposed to be at school on the last day. The only reason his photo was in the yearbook was because they were printed before his expulsion. That meant he had snuck into the school building, somehow gotten access to the yearbooks and written that message, just for me. The school said they had no idea how he'd gotten back inside. Security should have stopped him, but somehow he slipped in and out without anyone noticing. Even worse, when they tried to contact his family, the number on file didn't work. It was like they'd vanished. No address, no emergency contact, nothing. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. How did he know where I lived? I never talked to him. I never even looked at him. There was no reason for him to fixate on me, but somehow he had. And it wasn't just a passing thing. He watched me, followed me, waited until the moment he knew I'd be vulnerable. That was the scariest part. The planning, the patience, the way he acted like we were meant to be friends, like I was supposed to let him in. My parents tried to reassure me, saying it was probably over, that he got scared and wouldn't come back. But I never felt the same in that house again. Every night after that, I double-checked every lock. I stopped sleeping in the basement. I kept the blinds closed, even during the day. And sometimes, even now, I think I hear knocking, soft, rhythmic, and patient, just like before. Story 2. Graduation night was supposed to be one of the best nights of my life. I had just finished 4 long years at a tough school in Chicago, and everyone in my senior class was ready to let loose. It was that weird space between finishing finals and actually graduating, so we were all technically done but still around campus for a few more days. That night, a huge group of us had gathered at the campus clock tower. I'm talking hundreds of people. It was loud, packed, and full of good energy. We were laughing, taking pictures, hugging each other, and just soaking in that feeling of freedom. The group I was with was pretty tight. There were 6 of us. Me, my friend Nate, Tasha, Leo, Ben, and the one and only Marcus. Now Marcus is the kind of guy who thinks being loud and unpredictable is a personality. He always had to be the center of attention. And honestly, most of the time we just let him have it. But that night, he pushed things way too far. After the party started winding down, we began the walk back to our house off campus. It was a straight 15-minute walk through the city, and even though it was late, the streets weren't totally empty. There were a few people around, mostly groups of students, but also a few sketchy types you learn to ignore if you've lived in a city long enough. As we crossed this dimly lit intersection, a man stepped into our path. He looked homeless, maybe in his 50s, with a torn jacket, wild eyes, and this sort of jerky, unpredictable energy. He didn't just stumble past us. He stopped and stared, then started yelling nonsense like we were trespassing on some invisible line. Most of us ignored him. We gave him space and walked in a wide circle, not trying to provoke anything. But Marcus, of course, just had to say something. He muttered loud enough for the guy to hear. Something like, "Take your meds, old man." That's all it took, the guy snapped. He stepped forward and started shouting at us, his voice echoing down the street. At first, it was just noise, stuff we couldn't even understand. But then he started pointing, swearing, saying we were going to regret it. Marcus didn't back down. He laughed. Then he took a few steps toward the guy and raised his arms like he wanted to fight. The man flinched and backed off, clearly not expecting that. But he didn't walk away. He just stood there, still yelling. We dragged Marcus down the sidewalk and kept walking, but the vibe had changed. Everyone was on edge, glancing over their shoulders. The guy didn't follow us at first, or at least we didn't see him right away. We figured it was over. Dumb encounter, bad judgment, whatever. We'd be home in a few minutes. But 2 blocks later, Leo looked back and saw the man again. He was keeping his distance, maybe half a block behind, but definitely following. We tried to lose him, changing streets, taking shortcuts between buildings. Every time we thought we lost him, he popped up again, on the opposite corner, across the street, or just barely in sight. He never ran. He didn't shout anymore. He just followed, slow and steady, like he had all the time in the world. I felt this tightness in my chest, and I could tell the others were feeling it too. Even Marcus had gone quiet, which never happened. We whispered to each other about what to do. None of us wanted to lead him back to our house, so we slowed down, hoping he'd pass us. He didn't. Then, just before we reached the turn to our block, Marcus did something reckless again. Without saying a word, he sprinted back the way we came, yelling at the man like he was daring him to fight. The guy froze, then bolted in the opposite direction. Marcus came jogging back to us, laughing like he just won a game. "Problem solved," he said. But I didn't feel solved. I felt like something had been started, something that wasn't finished. And as we made it back to our place and walked through the front door, I couldn't help but wonder if we'd really left him behind. Because even though I couldn't see him anymore, the way he had watched us, like he was memorizing our faces, was burned into my mind. We thought the night was over once we got home. Everyone was back in the house, loud again, laughing like nothing had happened. I wanted to shake off that weird feeling from earlier, but I couldn't. I kept thinking about that guy, the way he followed us, the way he stared at us, like he had some kind of plan. We tried to act normal. Someone turned on music, and someone else grabbed leftover pizza from the fridge. A couple of people were already talking about what bar to hit next, but I couldn't stop glancing at the window. Every shadow outside made me flinch. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the guy was probably halfway across the city by now or sleeping under a bridge somewhere. I really wanted to believe that. About an hour later, my phone buzzed. My DoorDash order had arrived. I'd ordered it earlier, half expecting to forget about it. I stumbled out to the front porch to grab it, and that's when I noticed something off. The side gate was open. That wouldn't seem weird on its own, but we always kept that gate closed with a loop of twine tied around the latch. The kind of gate that wouldn't just blow open on its own. My brain didn't even have time to catch up. I just knew something was wrong. I put the food down and walked slowly toward the gate. I should have called my friends. I should have gone back inside. But instead, I went around the side of the house, trying to act like I wasn't freaking out. It was dark back there. Too dark. The motion sensor light didn't turn on, which made me stop in my tracks. I knew it was working earlier that day. That light always flicked on, even for raccoons, so why wasn't it working now? My stomach dropped. I turned around to go back, and before I could even take a step, I felt something slip around my neck. A rope. It pulled tight so fast I couldn't even yell. My legs kicked out, my hands clawed at the sides of my neck, but whoever was behind me was strong. I couldn't breathe. My ears were ringing, and I felt my knees hit the ground. The only thing going through my mind was that I'm going to die behind my own house on graduation night. I don't know how I did it, but I managed to swing my elbow back and hit something. Maybe his leg or stomach, I'm not sure. It threw him off just enough for me to twist and fall to the side. The rope loosened, and I sucked in a sharp breath of air that burned my lungs. I turned to see him. It was the same guy, the one from the street. His eyes were wild, teeth bared, and he lunged at me again. I kicked as hard as I could, caught him in the knee, and scrambled backward on all fours like some panicked animal. He fell but got up fast, still coming. I screamed. I didn't care who heard me. I screamed like my life depended on it, because it did. And finally, the back door flew open. Marcus and Ben ran out, yelling, one of them holding a bat. That's when the guy bolted. He leapt over the side fence like he'd done it 100 times. By the time they got to me, I was sobbing. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't even hold my phone. Someone called the police, and the rest of the night was a blur of flashing lights and questions. They never caught him. Not that night. Maybe not ever. I ended up in the hospital for a few hours. The cuts on my neck were shallow, but the bruising was deep, and the fear ran even deeper. I kept thinking about how close I came to dying, how stupid it was to go outside alone. My friends felt awful, especially Marcus. He didn't even try to crack a joke. He just sat there, quiet, until visiting hours ended. We all moved out a week later like we planned, but I never felt safe in that house again. Sometimes, I still think about that night, about how a single moment, a dumb comment to the wrong guy, spiraled into something life-threatening. We thought we were untouchable. We thought the world outside was just background noise. But that night, it came crashing through the gate, and it almost took everything. Story 3. It was supposed to be a fun, easy day. The last day of 8th grade. The kind of day where no one really does anything. Teachers are checked out, and everyone's just counting down the minutes to summer break. But from the moment I woke up that morning, something felt weird. It started small. My alarm didn't go off, even though I triple-checked that it was set the night before. My cereal tasted stale, even though the box had just been opened. And when I got to school, I couldn't find any of my friends. Like, not one. We always met up by the front lockers before class, but the hallway was nearly empty. I told myself they were probably running late or already in homeroom, but even that felt off. It wasn't like them. When I walked into my homeroom, I immediately noticed the energy was different. Normally, the room would be buzzing with noise, people trading yearbooks or talking about summer plans. But that day, it was quiet. Not silent, but quieter than usual. And the kids in there? I didn't recognize half of them. I remember standing in the doorway, hesitating, scanning the room and thinking, did I walk into the wrong class? But the teacher was there, Miss Bell, and she looked up and greeted me like everything was normal. So I walked in and sat down in my usual spot. That's when I noticed Sven. He was always in my homeroom, but he usually kept to himself, quiet, kind of off in his own world, always wearing the same oversized burgundy hoodie and cargo shorts. But that day, he was different. He was tapping his foot constantly, eyes darting around the room like he was watching someone or waiting for something. I'd seen him act a little weird before, but this felt tense, like he was on edge. Miss Bell was handing out these silly reflection worksheets, basically just busy work to keep us from going crazy during the last hour of school. I didn't mind. I liked having something to focus on, but even with my head down, I could feel the weirdness in the room growing. There was just something off about the way the other students were acting. Some were whispering to each other, but in a way that felt organized, like they were planning something. And again, I didn't recognize so many of them. I kept asking myself, are they from other classes? Other grades? But none of it added up. Then Miss Bell picked up the classroom phone. She turned her back on us and started whispering into it. After a few moments, another teacher came into the doorway. They had a quick, hushed conversation I couldn't hear, and then they both started walking around the room, quietly talking to certain students. Not the whole class, just a few. Those kids got up and followed the teachers into the hallway without saying a word. No one else seemed to care, but I watched every second of it, and I felt this tight, uneasy knot forming in my chest. Miss Bell came back in and sat down like nothing had happened. She didn't say a word. I glanced at Sven. He was staring at the door, unmoving. Then, the fire alarm went off. At first, I thought maybe it was part of the end-of-year fun, but Miss Bell didn't react like it was a drill. She stood up, looked around the room slowly, and told us to line up and head out back. We did. As I walked down the hall and out the back doors with the rest of the class, I looked around, trying to spot my friends. I saw some familiar faces out on the field, grouped by homerooms like usual. I walked over to them, trying to act normal, but my brain was spinning. I couldn't stop thinking about the kids who left the room, or about Sven and the way he watched the door like he was expecting something. Then I looked back at the school building, just a glance, but I saw something move in one of the second-floor windows. Fast, like someone ducking down. It could have been nothing, a shadow, a trick of the light, but it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like something was about to happen, something bad, and I was just standing out there, completely unaware of what was going on behind those walls. We were all standing outside on the field, waiting for someone to tell us what was going on, but no one did. Teachers just walked around trying to keep us calm, saying the fire drill was a precaution, nothing to worry about. But it didn't feel like a normal drill. There was tension in the air. No one was laughing or joking like they usually did during these things. Even the loud kids were quiet. I kept staring back at the building, at that second-story window where I thought I saw something move. I told myself it was probably just a janitor or maybe a teacher who didn't know there was a drill, but deep down it felt like something worse. Then we started hearing sirens. Not one or two, but a lot. Within minutes, a whole row of police cars pulled into the parking lot, and officers rushed out. No lights, no announcements, no panic from them. They just went straight into the school building, like they knew exactly where to go. That's when people around me started whispering. First, just a few students asking each other what was going on. Then more. I could hear fragments like, was there a threat, and did someone bring something? I just stood there, trying not to look scared, but my stomach was turning. A teacher came by and said school was being let out early and we needed to call our parents for pickup. No one told us why. No one told us anything. We were just supposed to act like it was fine. I borrowed a friend's phone because I'd left mine in my backpack, and I called my mom. She said she was already on the way because she got an email from the school about a potential safety concern. That's all it said. When she picked me up, I could tell she was shaken, even though she tried to hide it. Later that night, after a lot of pushing, my parents finally told me what the school had told them. Apparently, a group of kids who didn't even go to our school had gotten inside somehow. There were rumors that they had been planning to set the building on fire, or worse. One of the teachers, Miss Bell, I think, had found something suspicious in one of their backpacks. Matches, lighters, maybe something else. And that's what triggered the fire alarm. They said it was all handled and no one got hurt, but there were still so many unanswered questions. Like, who were those kids? How did they get in? Why were they even there? And the worst part, the part that still haunts me, was what my mom said right before she dropped the subject for good. She told me the school believed Sven had let them in, that he'd used recess as a distraction to sneak them in through the side fence. I didn't even know what to say. I remember just sitting there, frozen, thinking back to how weird he was acting that day. He kept glancing around the room, tapping his foot, clearly anxious. How certain kids I didn't recognize, were taken out one by the teachers. It was like he'd helped them get inside and then tried to keep watch during class. I don't know if he planned to do something himself, or if he was just part of whatever that group was doing, but the fact that the school never released more details made it worse. They kept everything vague, like they didn't want to admit how close it came to being something awful. Sven never came back to school. No one saw him again after that day. Some people said he got expelled. Others said his family moved. But I never heard anything official. It was like he vanished. And no one really talked about it again. People just wanted to move on, pretend nothing had happened. But I still think about it sometimes, especially when I drive past the school. I wonder what would have happened if Miss Bell hadn't checked that backpack. Suppose the fire alarm hadn't gone off. If we had stayed in that building for even a few more minutes. And I wonder how long Sven had been planning it, or if he even really understood what he was part of. That day changed the way I see people, especially the quiet ones, because sometimes the ones no one notices are the ones hiding the scariest secrets.